And also like since we're talking about tech companies, open source companies, they are doing a lot of stuff related to code, of course, and maybe some libraries for this. Like a lot of requests about like we need to show, I don't know, code snippets for sure. Like even if it's like a really small part of the business and there is like a SaaS product which is actually main focus, but like we need to show that we have code snippets, we have some JavaScript code samples, like because otherwise nobody will get that it's actually for developers. I personally think that companies should mostly care about messaging and the words they are showing on the site or the product rather than the themes, gradients, and stuff. So typography and messaging much more important from my point of view.
Okay, we're live. So, hello everybody. Hello to our listeners. Welcome to another episode of SourceLife. And today we have Alex. Alex is the CEO of Pixel Point. Pixel Point is a boutique studio for designing actually everything, but with a significant focus on open source. Uh, just a tiny disclaimer: Pixel Point is actually created the entire Nova website. So, Alex. But before that, we also have again our permanent guest and kind of co-host Tomer Bana, the CEO of Novo. Hi, Tomer. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Will. Thank you for having me.
Happy to be here again. And Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. So let's start, Alex, with basically just present yourself. Tell us who you are, what you are, and something unique about you, something that we probably will find a bit surprising.
Sure. So first of all, I'm a software engineer with experience of more than a decade already. So I started as just an ordinary WordPress developer, PHP developer, and then I switched quickly to Ruby on Rails, and I found it a very nice language and framework as well, with a very strong opinionated way of how you should to code, what the patterns you should to follow. And it's kind of created me, I suppose, because after that, it was very hard to switch into a Node.js environment after like 5 years working with Ruby on Rails, because everything in Node.js and JavaScript world was so terrible in this state. Like no tooling, no opinion at all. Like do whatever you want to do, the way you want to do this. And after like Ruby on Rails, like, oh, really? Like, how should I do these things that already exist for ages? And what is the perfect way for doing this? And it was really complicated for me switching to this. But like I knew that, okay, Node.js and JavaScript, React Word is something that is coming, is something that will be trendy. So I wanted to be in that line. And also I was always passionate about front-end development. I was very happy to create some beautiful things, beautiful websites, beautiful products, and be very passionate about like details in these products. So yeah, I started with that, and like 5 years ago, I founded a company that called Pixel Point, and our journey not started the way we currently operate the business. And at the beginning, we were mostly a full stack development agency trying to serve needs, like different needs of all type of clients. Like throw to us every task, we will do this. But we like quickly realized that it's not a sustainable business model. It's very hard to scale, especially if you want to preserve certain level of quality. And like hard to find persons like managers, I don't know, architects, etc., who will be able to join the team and be the part of some client's team to grow that product.
Right.
And at the end, basically, it was an accident and some nice story behind it as well. But we switched to more an open source industry and started to build what we always wanted to do, like building great designs, building great products, and do the front end. So now we only do front end part, and we only do creative design. So we don't try to do backend. We don't try to do like, I don't know, database architecture or architecture of the application in general. We just found our focus, and we very enjoy to be there. In terms of just my ordinary life, I'm former piano player, and also I was a very fan of MMORPG games in the past. And before I started to
There we go.
Yeah, exactly. So before I started to be a developer, And I still have a very nice article about how actually games could help you build a very strong person and like improve certain characteristic of yourselves, because it's a playground where you can do like a lot of different stuff, and it could teach you to do different stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
There is a difference for sure, but it not only relates to an open source directly, but it relates to some complicated tech products mostly. Because like when you do something, let's say for designers, like Figma or Photoshop or like a bunch of like, photo editing tools, like everyone is able to understand what it does. Like designers could understand it, users could understand it, and it's very easy to build something around this. But when it comes to open source, let's say like Kubernetes, Rancher, Docker, those words are not familiar with ordinary people, and those words not familiar to designers as well. And that's why it's very hard for tech founders or open source founders to communicate with designers too when it comes to building some cool, good looking project, because basically no one understands it. And that's where we try to shine, because we bring software engineering experience to open source tech world with also great design experience. And we kind of, when someone is coming to us asking about like, okay, we're building some security observability and networking stuff for Kubernetes. And we like, oh, okay, we got it. So we at least understand the concept. We understand like what Kubernetes is. We understand like what like pitfalls are there, or what issues been in that industry as well. And we of course be able to translate that complexity into some nice visual appealing stuff. So yeah, so the most complicated part building designs for open source is understanding of open source, understanding of the technology, which is really hard. And it requires, of course, a lot of time to get into this.
Yeah, I think, just to put proper framing here, it's not specifically an issue of open source companies or open source project trying to work with agencies. It's in general, it's hard because designers are not necessarily technical people.
Yeah,
exactly.
And most of the time, it depends on which type of design you're talking about, whether that's kind of a marketing site or an actual product. But a lot of the times, copy and messaging tend to be a lot of the issues, and a lot of technical founders are not really that good in messaging or copy. And so, in that regards, kind of the designer gets the short stick, and he kind of needs to find out what to put out there, because, as Alex can definitely share with us, the actual copy tend to change the design quite a bit. And if the founder or the originator of the actual job project, whatever that may be, have no idea what they're going to write there, that's going to put a lot of strain on the design team trying to, okay, so I mean, what should I do? Is that going to be like a big title, a small one? Should I have and so your expertise there kind of gives you an added benefit of you giving the ability to help companies work out their messaging.
So the difference, I think, from open source and closed source projects is the following. So open source projects, first of all, they come with a great community, and they come with a great open-minded founders, which I very enjoy in that space. I mean that when you talk with someone who do something in open source, it's really a very pleasant experience, and people are open-minded, flexible. They open some for new ideas. They very kind, and that's like also like relates to fact what is the difference designing for open source and closed source. With open source, you highly likely will be dealing with very nice persons. So that's a very big difference. And in terms of the design itself, community orientation, it's also important. So for open source projects, especially if you're coming to design something that already has a community, so you need to listen to that community. You can't just do something and don't ask anyone, or just like be complete or ignore completely what they are saying. So it's more about communication. It's more about like, I don't know, exploring issues, exploring some pull, like not feature requests that users are leaving in GitHub issues again,
Mm-hmm.
or also exploring and talking with those communities members about like what are their pain points. And also, it's a great thing that when you're dealing with closed source projects, it's much harder to find the person who will you like to talk with about the changes that are coming. In
Mm-hmm.
open source space, it's much easier because they have like Discord channels, Slack channels, or whatever else, and you can just raise a hand and say, guys, we need someone to interview about like upcoming features or upcoming changes, and it's much easier. So, and it increases also velocity of the project because like you can iterate much faster because the community is always there and they are very passionate about what you do.
All right, so let's move to our next question. So most open source products we see have they have a really shallow and technical website design. So what do you think is really important? Like, why it should be unique? Why the design is so important?
So here's a lot of things to tell. First of all, like, yes, why did we come to the open source space? Because we've seen that a lot of companies have massive communities, have a very popular products, but at the same time being presented in the web in a very terrible way, like really terrible, like very bad designs, very bad products from UX perspective. But products itself still are very popular because they could be free, they could be easily extendable, and of course, like there are a lot of companies that use it and invest sometimes in it, but they don't invest in UX, for example.
Yeah.
And that's also one thing that, and also open source products, like as before. So now it's a little bit changing, but like as before, they build by developers to developers. And it makes a certain problems as well, because developers usually, they are very passionate about code, they're very passionate about architecture decision, and not every developer is flexible enough to accept certain changes in their code base, changes in their architecture in order to serve the need of the final user. Let's say like you go to some basic, I don't know, open source product, and it probably has even SaaS version, and there is a need to, I don't know, put tons of code in terminal in order to make it up and running, do a lot of commands, follow some tutorials in order to do something. But usually it's possible really to just like cut it up and just make a smooth UX experience for users. So that's the first thing. So by developers to developers. And of course, like the second point again is that it's hard for developers sometimes to talk to designers and explain what you do, and you usually don't prefer just to go into this. I mean that you have a sustainable, good enough open source project. Why do you want to bother yourself communicating with designers, spending hours of your lifetime explaining, I don't know, what's the logging is about, or I don't know what is Kubernetes is about, or what's the groundbreaking technologies you are building, and why is that technology used by Netflix, I don't know, Amazon or Microsoft. And so sometimes it's really hard. And also another point that not every tool needs design, because like probably you have a very sustainable open source project. You don't have a plans for monetizing it. You don't want to, I don't know, grow it rapidly. You don't have investment. And in that case, okay, it could survive with, I don't know, some very handmade design built by developers and be hosted on, GitHub pages, for example, within your repository, which is like very cool for developers.
I think I think the fact that there's shallow designs for websites and product on open source, it's kind of an extension to what you said about what engineers value. A lot of engineers value the actual code, the actual architecture, and we know that today that there are a lot of non-front-end oriented actual developers, and to find developers who are a pixel perfect, not by pixel perfect definition, more of a very detailed and very oriented into how it should work, does it looks like it was designed to look, are very hard to find, because at the end of the day, logic questions tend to be more of the where they want to play. And so I think a lot of them actually don't even think it's needed. Um, Given there are a lot of API first solutions, and then you don't necessarily actually need that, because if you only have like four JSONs that each one of them are 2000 properties length, you don't necessarily need to have UI. It might be just here you
Exactly.
go, that's the README. Go ahead, read every single one of those properties, and that's what you can do with it. That's it.
I
Uh,
personally don't understand many projects in open source space who trying to do website without designs. But like, why do you do this? I mean, that you can just go and use README files for this. Like, if you want to put some information, you don't need a website. You have README in open source,
right,
and it's already well structured. If you put your messaging right, it will serve you
right.
much better than any website. If you want to do website, do it right. This is my point, I guess, in that case.
I
I
mean, let's take a look at something like Sequelize.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
Sequelize, it's a big open source project. They have the website, and I've seen it morph since like version 2 up until like version 5, and it seems to be some sort of an elaborate version of a README plus API documentation plus other use cases, which I definitely get. And you could see how something that started as a very open source project kind of mutate to be an open source product when everything is taken into concerns. I think a lot of times, specifically if it's an open source project and a simple one, the developers doing that doesn't necessarily know it's going to become a product, and so they
exactly.
treat it like just like they would treat any other code they're writing.
Or
And
side project.
exactly,
Um, okay, so we have something that you said before. You said that it's a bit difficult to find designers that kind of align with your set of values and your set of like goal or the orientation and etc. And I kind of get that it's a problem, but how you do it? Like, how do you kind of tackle this problem?
The biggest challenge here is the following. So when we talk about, let's say, you're a founder of the company, you're about to hire a designer to build like your product design or marketing website. First mistake that people usually do here is that no matter like whether you technical product or not, uh, assumptions that one designer could do everything. No, it doesn't work this way. So, for example, if you can do product design, it's a very rare chance that you have experience building marketing websites or producing some marketing materials, do some PDF pitch decks, social media course, etc. You probably never touch this, and or you probably never touch graphic part of things or creating some nice illustration and stuff. And the first mistake here is usually thinking that, okay, since that person has a design postfix somewhere in the title, it means that he could do everything. No, it doesn't work this way. The second problem, of course, that like if you're hiring to, let's say, a technical company, of course, like there are a bunch of designers, tons of designers. They probably learn things from some courses, or read some books, etc. But the first mistake here, like not mistakes, they're issues that if you tech founders, you've probably not been in the design for ages. So how could you make sure that the designers that you're hiring is actually a good one from visual like pictures? Because like what you think is good doesn't mean that it's actually good. It's like, I don't know, like the same as in fashion. Like if you're wearing, I don't know, why one t-shirt for the whole year, it doesn't mean that it's a fashion or it's a very good thing and there's no other options to do it better, for example.
Yeah.
And it's the same with design, basically, that you have to really care about things and who you hire as well. Okay. What else? So we talk about like typical mistakes they do. And another thing is that basically companies have to somehow to explain what they do to those designers. Like, and how do they do this? Okay, there are probably a lot of meetings explaining some basic things related to IT industry, how, I don't know, HTTP works, how browser works, etc. Because like technical people use a lot of terminology in their vocabulary, explaining things to each other. It's like a common thing, and switching that context, switching that manner is really hard. And so, yeah, so when they come to designers, they're starting to speak with them as, I don't know, with ordinary developers, and designers is usually like, okay, okay, I get something from your conversation, but I'm not sure what we are going to do.
Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old.
Yeah, and probably multiple times actually. Yeah. And that's a very complex thing. And of course, like it can work the only way. So you, first of all, like when we see on some very great designs from great teams, in order to achieve it, you need to have someone who will be the proxy between actual technical requirements and like design language. And ideally, that person has to understand both worlds. So understands the technical part and design part. And that's exactly what makes it complicated to hire a good designer, to keep relationships with good designers, or like build something with those designers in general.
I actually think it's fundamentally harder than that. I think looking into how a lot of founders think, and I think that's kind of where the things start to crack, is they want to delegate the problem to someone else. Now, that's as a whole idea, it's nice, it could work, but for that someone to be able to actually, solve the problem in almost touchless kind of manner, they need to be able to think and solve every bit of the problem themselves. And once they aren't able to do so, then all this part of mediation is kind of in between. And when you're looking onto technical founders and designers, basically it's, one can speak English, the other can speak, I don't know, Spanish, and there's no way for them to translate. There's no way for them to translate. And then they're asking, okay, so can we get a good resolution out of it? Most probably no, because you can speak design and they can speak, they can speak technical, but you're starting to work together. How are you imagining that, having a positive outcome? Each one of you have to put and take the effort and learn how to speak the other one language. And because of that, a lot of founders don't, because they're not actually taking the time and effort to learn how to speak design, and because they don't know what they're looking for, even if the designer are taking a couple more steps into the actual technical realm, it doesn't help them, because then if the founder have no idea what they're looking to get, they wouldn't get it.
Another recommendation I will actually give for founders of tech companies is basically, if you have funds, invest into growing your team anyway. I mean, and not invest like if you start up with a seed A or like seed fund, there is no chance for you to hire a senior designer. Like, just forget about it. You won't get a cool design. You won't be able to hire it on your seed fund, because like if you're a senior designer, you're either very passionate about what you do and you already like swamped with different projects. You have a queue of clients and you really like will be able to pick which one you would like to work with, and probably your ideas that you came to that designer with like not interested for you. Yeah. And another thing is that it costs a fortune, of course. And of course, like if designer could pick versus like working, I don't know, in Vercel or working in a seed, like if you aiming for do some kind of designs that is Vercel does, like probably, yeah, it's like if that designer exists and looking for a job, seed great company is not something he's interested in, for sure. And so my recommendation because of this for companies is like, don't try to hire senior designers full time. Try to involve them into consultancy part. Try to make them like, at least like if you can reach out to some great designers, or maybe someone is looking for part-time like side project just for fun, use it, because like if they are great, they will be able to deliver value to a product even without, I don't know, like 2-3 hours like per week. And like then other time invest into using, I don't know, juniors designers to start growing them by that mentor from some very nice and like good space. And like, so, but it's of course like it's hard, it takes time, but at least like it will work at the end. And also the thing is that you have to make sure that, okay, really, like you won't be able to hire senior designers. They will call yourself senior designers, but if you really aim for, I don't know, Netlify or Vercel level of design quality, like guys, like forget about it. Seed or Series A, not the type of like companies that those guys are really interested to work with. Right. Unfortunately. Yeah. So that's why like agencies or finding some freelancers for at least consultancy role, like really rock stars, could work. Because for example, probably Tailwind, UI, Tailwind CSS, a very hyped technology. Behind that technology, there are a lot of like cool guys who time to time, and designers who time to time, for example, looking for a new project. Not like to be permanent employees in some companies, but like just go and bring some nice visual appealing stuff to those companies, and then like live from it. Yeah. So, and you probably could try to find those type of guys who are interested in building something beautiful and could bring a value to you, but at this stage they probably won't be interested in being a full-time employee. But maybe in a year, when you will show that you operate great, you have a sustainable business model, you're growing fast, you're still an interesting product for them, maybe they will join after that.
Yeah.
So maybe it could be a nice tip for early stage founders.
I think it's a great advice because, well, just find the passionate people where there probably will be, like Tailwind,
exactly.
And like those are the people who are constantly just contributing and doing passionately things about design and code. And yeah, well, great advice. Okay, so right now we kind of getting to probably our last question, and I also want to be kind of respectful with your time, Alex, because I know that you already gave so much of like in insights and shared a lot that we all can benefit from.
Thank you.
But my question right now would be, what kind of designs right now you find trending? I know that it definitely goes with the dark mode kind of thing, but how do you see it? Like, what do you think is really trending right now?
So, for example, right now there are more and more stuff that is coming with some 3D graphics. So 3D definitely is a new trend because it allows you to look a little bit different from everything on from your competitors. Of course, it takes much more time, but it's trendy right now. Another thing is basically a lot of companies, tech companies, coming with the idea, oh, we want dark mode. Like dark mode is the first thing we have to do and care about. I don't agree with this actually, because from my point of view, dark mode is a complementary thing rather than a primary thing that you have to focus on and spend your time and money on. Another thing is that the trend that I don't like personally is that gradients. I like gradients, but unfortunately, every client in tech space thinking that in order to be like accepted well by developers, we have to have gradients. Like gradients, dark theme. In that case, developers will love it immediately. And like
in general, I think some people out there believe some sort of I would say non-mandatory stuff becomes mandatory.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, since we're talking about tech companies, open source companies, they are doing a lot of stuff related to code, of course, and maybe some libraries for this. Like a lot of requests about, like, we need to show, I don't know, code snippets for sure. Like even if it's like a really small part of the business and there is like a SaaS product which is actually main focus, but like we need to show that we have code snippets, we have some JavaScript code samples, like because otherwise nobody will get that it's actually for developers. I personally
Right.
think that companies should mostly care about messaging and the words they are showing on the site or the product rather than the themes, gradients, and stuff. So typography and messaging much more important from my point of view.
One thing I want to add here is obviously I agree with you about gradients and a dark theme. I mean, it's nice. I would I'm coming from a technical background. I'm definitely an engineer. I wouldn't choose any product because it's dark theme, and I love dark theme. I really do, but that's not a reason to choose a solution.
Yeah,
With that being
exactly.
said, you mentioned about the actual code snippet. I can tell you that after our website was launched, we did basically a community feedback session with 20, 30 community members. And I can say that the two most looked out
Memorable.
things, no, looked out, what they actually was looking, community members was looking for was where can I see the docs? Right? I mean, okay, I got what you're doing. Nice, nice, nice. Where's the docs? And the other thing was, okay, got what you're doing. Where can I see the snippet? Otherwise, they have a tendency to feel it's too complicated. And if it's too complicated, I won't go into it right now.
In copy, like in the marketing copy kind of aspect, like there is kind of this rule of thumb that the the purpose of the first sentence is to get you to read the second sentence. So
Yeah.
basically it's just like with the design probably and the landing pages and everything, it probably a bit the same, like, but if we're talking about the design kind of area, is to create this kind of short snippets of kind of animation, maybe design something visual that will get you to scroll further down in the page and to understand deeply and deeply what the product the company is doing, and that how to be more and more engaging and to understand.
Sure.
So right now I actually want to give you, maybe Alex, like the stage to share something, maybe share something about your company, something that maybe you would like to use this kind of stage to just tell us, or something that it's important to you. I mean, it's
I have one story about open source projects that we worked with that's probably interesting to like show how developers are thinking and like a little bit explore this topic more.
love it.
So first of all, developers and the design. So also the common thing that we see is in order to look like a developer, you have to be edgy, edge corners, no rounded corners, etc. And you have to be precise in terms of what you're showing on the picture. So abstract things really don't work well for developers for some reason. I mean, not for all developers, for some specific developers, I will phrase it this way. And we had a very nice story. So as I mentioned, so Drone CI was our first jump into this open source space. We had a great experience. We started to get more clients from open source space, and we thought that we want to have some kind of open source support program in our company, and we still have it actually. So, for example, like if somebody is coming from open source space, we are okay to take much less work, much less size of the contract, less founded companies, because like it's something about we passionate a lot and we interested a lot into like building something fully transparent way, and we would like to invest our time into this as well, no matter like what the clients are doing. But another thing is that one day we wanted to invest a little bit more into that space, and we decided to pick another product that we will do completely new landing page for free, stunning, amazing, good looking. And we found that product. It's called Prometheus. That like some think
how does it call? How can you spell it?
Prometheus. So if you like, yeah, it's about logging and yeah. So cool thing here is that we reach out to founders, started to build designs, and because it's open source project, there is another problem here. Sometimes it's a problem. It's a community, and there is no kind of decision makers in place. So we end up with the following. So we built for guys amazing looking designs that is much more ahead of time probably because we did some 3D stuff like 2 years or 3 years ago. Like it was only start to become a trend, like doing some 3D things. And after a lot of rounds of discussions, someone likes it, someone does not like that 3D. Someone thinks that, oh, nobody uses in that space 3D, so probably we don't need to use it as well. But they have an ugliest website, like my thought was originally that basically giving something for free, which is definitely 10 times or 100 times better than what you have now, is something that will be accepted very easily. But at the end, it turned out that there are like rounds of discussions, rounds of very nitpicking things about like one member is wanting that thing, another member is wanting that thing, like 100 members wanting that thing. And at the end, we did not release that website because they realized that it's really hard to get agreed on something within their community in order to push it further. And I recently found that design in our archive because I wanted to have some references about one for an upcoming project. And like I found it and like, wow, it still looks beautiful. It's amazing. and it's so sad that we haven't released it. Because like it was a draft version, it wasn't like fully finished version, but it still was like way better than currently they have and still have. And that's about like open source space as well. Some people are really hard in terms of accepting some new things. Mm-hmm. And we can take a look at another example like Kubernetes.io. Mm-hmm. Terrible looking website. Terrible for ages. They have investments, they have funding behind it, but they just don't care. Means that they just don't want to bring it to a new level at all. And that's sad from my point of view, because like bringing some nice UX experience for projects that are actually being used for decades, it's something that we need to have right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, I guess, my story for the end of this conversation.
Amazing. And again, you even ending this kind of episode with a really high note of design, passion, and it's amazing. It's really amazing. I enjoyed every second, every bit of it, and I want to thank you, Alex, for coming. Thank you, Tomer, and I really hope that we can maybe do this again sometime and explore even more. By the way, Alex, do you like have some kind of a social media presence somewhere where people,
you can find me on Twitter, for example, Alex_Barashkov. So you will be able to leave it in the comment probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We will do that. So thank to all our listeners who stick to this point, and I really hope that you enjoyed it as much as I and probably Tomer did. I believe that Tomer did as well.
I did. Thank you,
Alex.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so
thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much, and I wish you a great day.